Old School RuneScape is an MMORPG with roots dating back over 20 years. The reason why it is referred to as Old School can be covered in another video. For this one, I would like to give newcomers and friends alike a loose description and overview of the game, as well as discussing a popular question that all RuneScape streamers get asked regularly. Is this game worth getting into nowadays? In this video, I will discuss the reality of this game that has captivated me since I was 11 years old. Like any loving relationship, beginning a courtship with this game is a roller coaster of ups and downs, and this game is notorious for being one of the largest time-gated games in the history of online gaming. It would not be right for me to present you an inaccurate picture of the pros and cons of beginning a journey in Old School RuneScape. Old School RuneScape is a sandbox MMO, which basically means it presents you with a nearly unlimited world of possibilities and actually forces or requires you to do very little, leaving each adventure, skill, and goal entirely up to the player. The main way to interact with the realm of Gielinor, the land where RuneScape takes place, is through utilizing 23 different skills. Similar to other games, these include a variety of gathering skills such as farming, mining, and woodcutting, but also more task-based skills such as crafting, making useful leather armor for example, or magical staves for battle, or Slayer, perhaps the most popular skill in the game, wherein a player is assigned to fight a certain number of specific monsters, some of which drop the most prestigious and expensive items in the game. While these skills may seem familiar to those of you who have played other MMOs, this familiarity ends quickly, because what I'm about to explain to you is, in my opinion, a large part of what makes us RuneScape players love this specific game so much and makes it difficult for many of us to find interest in other MMOs. Unlike most other popular online fantasy games, RuneScape does not have any form of different races, roles, or specific character positions in combat. For example, in World of Warcraft, one must choose a race or class that gives special abilities, but significantly limits what can realistically be done by any one avatar in the game. Old School RuneScape possesses no such limitations. All characters must be created as human, and all characters are free to train any combat style they wish, freely swapping between the three or restricting themselves for personal reasons or goals, which we can cover in another video. The overall point is that when you create a RuneScape account, you can shoot arrows, swing swords, and cast magical spells. You are free to train any combat skill you like, and the same with the other skills. No one skill is linked to any race or combat style in particular because you are not limited in your combat choices. Each of these skills has various unlocks and perks as you train it, before finally reaching the ultimate level that a skill can be, level 99. Before we delve deeply into the other skills, let's give a brief overview of the way the combat skills work in RuneScape. There are three styles of combat that players may use against monsters, or, in certain situations, each other. The attack styles are known as ranged, using projectiles such as bows and arrows or throwing knives, melee, hand-to-hand close-range combat with swords, armor, and other various handheld solid weapons, and magic, which depletes magical runestones for fuel and can do everything from freeze multiple enemies in place to teleport you to exotic or inconvenient places located all over the map. For those of you who have played Pokemon, the next concept will be simple. The reason RuneScape needs no class system is because each of these styles is strong against one and weak against the other. Similar to how Charmander beats Bulbasaur beats Squirtle beats Charmander, here we see magic beating melee beating range which beats magic. Wearing thick armor to provide good defenses to swing a sword acts as a lightning rod for magical spells, while simultaneously deflecting the arrows that are shot at it. The archer is being sliced to shreds through his leather accuracy boosting armor by the sword, but he is able to secure fatal shots through the thin robes of his magical adversary. And as the mage succumbs to the ranger, he dies knowing that for the next 30 seconds, the knight and his sword will be frozen solid like a rock, in place, with ice cubes pouring down his plate body. In this way, it is useful and relevant for a player to train each of the combat styles. While it is rare for a player to use more than one style while fighting most monsters, fighting more advanced monsters or engaging in the two types of raids will often require the player carrying a multitude of gear pieces in order to completely maximize the damage output for each style of combat. Ranged, as a skill, is leveled up, or trained, by doing damage with projectile weapons. As this skill increases, both your ranged accuracy, which is how often you hit, and your ranged strength, which is how hard you hit, will increase as 1. Magic, as a skill, is trained by casting various spells with runestones. The stones can be expensive, but unlike melee and ranged, there are a great number of non-combat ways to train magic that can either offset the cost for the patient people or be prohibitively expensive in the name of fast training. As this skill increases, you will unlock more magical spells and eventually even completely different sets of spells, and also, you become less susceptible to the magical attacks of other monsters and players, meaning your magical defense is built into the level. Melee, unlike the others, is divided into 3 skills. Attack, which is your accuracy against your opponent and how often you successfully hit. Strength, which is how high of a number you may hit when doing damage. And defense, which is how often you take damage from other players or monsters, based on their attack level. It is worth noting that defense is not specific to the melee skills and is useful for all accounts. An extremely limited number of people choose not to train defense whatsoever, which I will get to in another video. Defense may be trained through both ranged and magic styles, though it is oftentimes faster to use your melees to train it, instead of splitting the experience with ranged or magic. These specific skills add together to calculate your combat level, which is a representation of the overall combat strength of your account, the absolute maximum combat level being 126. 2 other skills are also considered when the game crunches your combat level: hit points and prayer. Hit points is exclusively trained by doing damage to targets, player and monster alike. Unlike many other MMOs, in Old School RuneScape, your hit points level directly correlates to the damage you can take. If your hit points level is 60, you may take 60 points of damage before dying and being sent to your respawn point, which I'll cover in another video, big surprise. You are capable of taking essentially infinite damage if you have food with you, but I digress. Your hit points level is directly your amount of hit points, which is not altered by gear like in other MMOs. Prayer is also one of the most powerful and useful skills in the game, and is so important in fact that it has to be considered in a player's combat level. Prayer is often trained by burying bones or offering them on altars dedicated to the various RuneScape gods, but other methods have emerged over the last few years, making prayer a varied and potentially cheap skill while also maintaining its status as a necessity. Using a point system based on your level, just like hit points, prayer levels unlock prayers that do everything from double the restore rate for your health, offer incredible offensive buffs to help you slaughter your opponents in battle, or even completely and utterly shield you from all damage from monsters. Obtaining level 43 prayer is regarded by many players as a necessity for fighting monsters and bosses, because it is the level which allows you complete protection from any individual combat style, provided that you are only using the prayers one at a time, and of course that it's a monster attacking you, not a player. If a player attacks you, these prayers offer only a damage reduction, not protection. So those are the 7 combat skills, but that leaves 16 more. For the most basic overview I can give, let's scan through them so you know what we're working with. Rune crafting is the art of turning nearly worthless rune essence into runestones, the powerful source of magic in RuneScape that is required for all spellcasting. Until very recently, this was widely revered as the worst, slowest, and most repetitive skill in the game, but it has always been lucratively profitable, even at the lowest levels. Recently, the skill received a minigame that is much more fun to train than the typical routes, and offers a great deal of benefits for training there. This was a much needed update, and rune crafting is now a profitable skill that can be enjoyable and trained with friends as well. Construction is the art of fine-tuning one's player-owned house, or POH for short. Before this skill can be trained, a house must be purchased from one of several estate agents around the game for 1,000 coins, an absolutely meager amount. This is perhaps one of the most powerful skills in your repertoire, because training to a high construction level gives your character the knowledge of crafting intricate jewelry boxes containing unlimited uses of exotic teleports, pools to instantly refresh your character's health, save them from poison and restore their ability to run, and even freely swap your magic spells between the different sets for whatever you may need on your adventures. Construction is also a notably expensive skill, requiring some of the steepest amounts of money in the game to train any skill in the traditional way. Again, the skill recently had a mini-game style update and has become cheaper to train, although as is the norm in RuneScape, doing things the cheaper way is almost always going to be several orders of magnitude slower than doing them the pricey way. The skill of agility is essentially how fast your character restores their run energy. Each character has energy up to 100%. This energy is depleted almost exclusively by running, though a few random monsters around the game can deplete it in very specific circumstances. When your player is running, they are moving at exactly twice the speed of that when they're walking. When your run energy hits 0, you go back to the mind-numbing madness of crossing a mega map at a snail's pace. Training agility will allow you to run farther distances before running out of breath, as well as teaching your character how to navigate some useful and tight spaces and shortcuts that aren't accessible when you're less knowledgeable about the world. Herb lore is the art of making potions, with potions being an absolute staple of the RuneScape world, providing everything from offensive boosts to poison immunity to even healing our very hit points. Herb lore can be very expensive to train, but is essentially the process of combining herbs with a vial of water and following it with a specific secondary ingredient. This skill is highly valued in some group-oriented content, such as Raids 1, Chambers of Xeric, where players are free to craft their own powerful potions to aid them in fighting ancient monsters deep underground in search of legendary loot owned by semi-mortal wizards of yore. Thieving is, well, just that. Thieving is very repetitive to train at basically all levels, though thankfully there are many options for your sticky-fingered avatar to crack his knuckles over. Beginning with pickpocketing average citizens around Gielinor, eventually, the player can plunder long-lost pyramids in search of scepters, or pinch valuable jewels from the pockets of the race of volcanic rock creatures known as the Tsar. Thieving is essentially a complete profit skill, as you are literally stealing the objects from your subject. A good thieving level is required for a multitude of quests, and again, is very useful in Raids 1. Crafting is a large skill, but fairly straightforward. This skill allows you to make dragonhide armor, used by archers, or perhaps beer glasses from molten glass, or even to craft jewelry for enchanting with magic for useful teleports or stat boosts. Crafting can be reasonably expensive to train, but is an all-around somewhat useful skill. It is worth noting that none of the best armor in the game can be made through the crafting skill, nor through any other skill for that matter, but reasonably useful things can be crafted. Fletching is the art of crafting bows, arrows, and feathered ammunition. An archer may utilize this skill to make their own ammo if they don't want to purchase it from other players, but unlike other games, this is in no way a requirement. Fletching can lead to creating bows from nearly every type of wood in RuneScape, or fletching the sticks perfectly straight to be knocked and rained hellfire on your opponents. Slayer is perhaps the most profitable skill of all, and the chosen favorite of most of the higher level players in Old School RuneScape. This skill is trained only when given a direct task from one of several Slayer masters that correlate to your level. When this task of X number of X monster is underway, you will receive Slayer experience roughly proportional to the hit points of the assigned monster. While this skill can be tiresome and expensive to train when it's at a lower level, and can actually cost you money, reaching the mid-70s and beyond in the level of Slayer unlocks access to some of the most consistently profitable monsters and bosses in the game, some of which, such as the Alchemical Hydra, arguably the single most consistently profitable boss in RuneScape, require incredibly high Slayer levels to fight, in this instance, 95. Slayer is also a famously slow skill to train. It takes hundreds of hours to achieve level 99 Slayer, the highest skill level in RuneScape, but along the way, you are absolutely guaranteed to make hundreds of millions of coins profit, while also training your combat stats to prepare for stronger bosses and monsters along the way. It really is a win-win-win-win skill, so if you can muster up the strength, power through it. Slayer will keep your biceps strong and your bank plentiful. Hunter is the art of luring, trapping, and capturing a massive variety of species throughout the realm of Gielinor. Some of this is somewhat arbitrary, such as the lower level methods of simply catching birds for a few feathers or snagging butterflies into a jar. However, later hunter methods are immensely profitable, such as catching chinchompas for players to train their range skill with, or cutting the extra herbs off of the wild herbivore that roam the alien landscape of Fossil Island. Many hunter methods are relatively quick, and the profits for this skill can be huge. Mining is fairly straightforward. It is the art of gathering precious ore to be smelted into bars or jewelry for use. There's a moderate variety of ore in RuneScape, but thankfully, the mining skill has branched into an extremely wide skill with many options for training, no longer being the click and wait simulator of my childhood. Mining is another skill that can be immaculately profitable, but also has a relaxing method for training it, known as the Motherlode Mine, where players can basically click once every minute or so and rack up mediocre XP. But mediocre XP is XP nonetheless. Smithing is sort of a sister skill to mining, though as always, you may train one without the other if you so desire. Smithing allows you to refine the ore obtained from mining into purified bars and then hammer them into weapons, arrow tips, throwing knives, tools, and armor. I will admit that the smithing skill is incredibly unbalanced as far as power goes. It requires 99 smithing to make a rune plate body, which requires only level 40 defense to wear, and is a staunchly early game item. However, it is incredibly profitable at that skill level, and making runite bars into runite items can make millions for anyone looking to make some coins while they make some experience. Fishing, of course, is the art of luring and catching various sea species around Gielinor. Food obtained through the fishing skill probably makes up at least 90% of the overall hit point restoring food that players will consume, the other 10% being potions that can be rapidly combined with food when in extreme danger. This means there's an endless demand for fish, and it will always be something worth doing in your downtime. At high fishing levels, the highest healing food in the game may be freely obtained from specific rivers, lakes, or in some cases, mini-games. This skill can be very relaxing and profitable. Cooking is sort of a sister skill to fishing, though it is one of the most intricate and wide-ranging skills in the game, with an utterly massive range of possibilities to whip up over your digital campfire. Don't feel overwhelmed though. Only a small percentage of the food that's actually coded into the game is truly utilized, and what is typically cooked with straightforward, use raw piece of meat on fire. The vast majority of food cooked in this skill, in terms of both supply and demand, is fish. Some stoves and locations around RuneScape offer boosted chances of successfully cooking your meal. Looking into these can save a great deal of time and money over a long grind. Fire making is almost a completely useless skill. It is required for a few quests because there are certain caves and alleys around the game that call for a light source for entry, but overall, there are very few perks to having a high training level in fire making. This skill can be trained by using the tinderbox you obtained when you created your account on a set of level appropriate logs. Logs will be covered more in the next skill, which is woodcutting, but it's worth noting that due to the outrageous nature of a useless skill requiring intense and expensive content, the Winter Toad minigame boss was released a few years ago, where players can train this garbage skill for very little supply usage and receive supply crates with exclusive rewards, at the cost of receiving less overall experience points per hour, a very important number for many of us dedicated players who play the game for thousands of hours. Woodcutting is simply the art of chopping down a tree. You may begin only with a bronze or iron woodcutting axe being used on only the most basic of trees, but eventually, one may fell sky blue magic trees with swirling star leaves while clutching an axe upgraded and charged with the crystal shard remnants of a literal goddess. As with many of the more basic gathering skills, woodcutting is essentially all profit once you've made back the price of your axe, but it cannot compete against things like monster fighting for overall profit per hour. Finally, we have the farming skill, one of my personal favorites. This relaxing skill is time-locked, and as such, there is realistically a limit to the amount of experience points you can get per day in the farming skill, unless you once again utilize a minigame known as the Tithe Farm. Farming plants seeds from low-level food crops to herbs used in expensive potions, and harvests a complete product, with the yield increasing and becoming more certain of survival as your farming level increases. Farming can be incredibly profitable, but as mentioned before, you may only return to your farming patches periodically to replant your crops, as they may take anywhere from 20 minutes to several days to grow. Each of these 23 skills may be trained or combined in any way imaginable. Only you yourself set the limits. Inside RuneScape, there are over 150 quests to complete, some of which require your character to have enough knowledge of thieving to steal an artifact from a chest, for example, or to have the mining level required to plow through a blocked path to save a possessed priest. So while you may be required to obtain levels to do these quests, the game will not force you to do any quest or any skill whatsoever that you don't want to do. You can freely train your combat skills, you can mine for 1,000 hours and sell the ores to be rich, or smelt them and smith them for your own experience. You can train only one style of combat so your overall level stays deceptively low, where you can reach level 99 in each combat skill and declare yourself to be a master of the monsters of RuneScape. The limitless aspect of this game pushed the replay value through the roof, and some of these grinds are admittedly the longest and most punishing in the history of video games. So why do I love it so much? Is it worth getting into? I started playing RuneScape on Saturday, August 14th, 2004, at the age of 11. I had no idea that this game would become a staple of my life, my one true preferred video game, the land that I would escape to when family problems would catch up to me, the game I would go to prison over because I had a loud, smart mouth. For 18 years now, I have either actively played this game or not been able to and desperately wanted to. Despite 18 years of playing, I've achieved only a fraction of my goals, and the ones that I have already accomplished have kept me flooded with dopamine and satisfaction along the way. But what keeps me going? Is it worth it? What would I tell someone completely new getting into it? It seems to me that people either click with RuneScape or they don't. I think for most of us, the early game and starting out is a bit bland because grinding skills can be repetitive as you slowly grow your power to take on more entertaining and varied content. For many of us who do fit well with this game, other MMOs just don't really hit the spot, feeling far too limited in comparison to the unlimited account builds and journeys that RuneScape offers. In this game, you can seek to plunder cursed artifacts from beneath a grand theater where vampires watch humans die for sport. You can fell massive trees and craft them into nearly anything you can imagine. You can complete every quest in the game and become a legendary hero whose name is uttered in every pub in Gielinor. Or, you can stand at a bank and talk to strangers, completely ignoring the other aspects of the game, an activity so popular that it actually has its own term: bank standing. Bonus points if you wear goofy or expensive gear. This game has given me ups and downs, highs and lows. Sometimes I have foregone sleep for days in my urgency to conquer this fantastical landscape. Sometimes I go weeks without playing, convinced that I'll never log in again. The only way for sure to know if this game is for you is to try it. Breaking down the perks of the paid version of the game versus the free version can come later, but for now, the game has a completely free version, and you can jump in and start playing with us right now. If you need a little direction, feel free to join my Discord, or in-game, join our friends chat, which does require either 150 total level, which is all your levels added together, easily obtainable in a few short hours, or active membership to the game. If this video helped you in any way, or was simply entertaining to watch for a veteran who learned nothing at all, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for future content for all levels of RuneScape. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.